Welcome everyone to another episode of Price Targets with your host Bitcoin Jack. Welcome back. It's Thursday. We're going to be looking at Bitcoin as usual. ETH has been doing a very nice run. It's actually come back versus Bitcoin super strongly. We're going to be looking at the lower time frames for Bitcoin. I'm still not entirely of a certain high conviction, but the lower time frames look promising for a breakup and at least a relief rally. I do think that we're going to be having a little bit of upside, and then it's going to be questionable what's going to happen afterwards. First of all, your attention for the sponsor who's making all these videos possible, Prime XBT. They're a lovely exchange and they have everything you need. If you sign up using the link in the description below and or the watermark and use the promo code BitcoinJack, you will receive a 50% deposit bonus up to 0.5 BTC. Some conditions apply. If you look at their website, you can find them, but in short, basically you get to keep the profits that you make with the bonus, but once you withdraw, you will lose the bonus. All right, so that out of the way, let's have a look at Bitcoin. Last week we looked at, there's a lot of lines on my chart, sorry for that, but we looked at this structure. So basically we had a very nice wedge here, and usually when wedges, this is just for future reference, usually when you see these wedges, they have this diagonal, they kind of fake out on it and then reclaim it. That's usually a very good sign for an upside rally into the major supply up here. So I do think that Bitcoin is now testing this kind of line up here. It kind of got rejected back into the range up here, but I think that this supply has been tested quite a few times now. Once, twice, sold off another time, and now it's coming back into it. And if you've been following me for a long time, I usually say never trust the fourth. We can draw a little bit of a trend line up here. I do expect that Bitcoin is going to trade into this trend line, which is also at our diagonal resistance, which is, if we look at it, the old high up here that we got rejected off, and it's also this level right there. So basically, I think Bitcoin short term is tuning, gearing up to get some upside relief. Where does it go to? Well, that's the whole big tough question. The big question is whether if it does rebound, are we back into bull market? I wouldn't dare answer that question. It's a huge distribution up here, and the question is whether people have capitulated enough. This was probably one of the largest candles in a bull market Bitcoin has ever seen. I would dare say that this is still a bull market. Obviously, there is still possibility for Bitcoin to trade much lower, and then even then, I think it's still a bull market, and then we probably have something as 2013. So there's a few metrics that kind of suggest that this is the bottom that are convincing enough. Then there are a few metrics that say that the bottom is probably a little bit lower. It's hard to really make a tough, at this point we kind of just gotta trade the levels that we have locally until it becomes a little bit more obvious. At least that's how I look at it. What's possible is that we kind of get a 2013 like consolidation. So first big sell-off, relief rally into a reaccumulation, and then later this year into, I don't know, like September, October, get a new rally. The other possibility is that this was just a giant capitulation caused by a lot of leverage in the markets, and that it's just gonna, consolidate at much higher levels without a pullback, without much sideways, and then into continuation. So basically there's a few scenarios. It comes up here, it goes sideways, does that, it comes up here, sells off again, back into demand for a longer period of time, then goes up. The third option, obviously, is that it kind of does something like this. If it does that, at that point, I do think that it's not really going to consolidate much as it comes back, because a lot of the supply of underwater holders will likely be sold. So there's two areas in that sell-off, if that occurs to the downside, that I'd be paying attention to, which are around 20 and 25k. At this point, I think that Bitcoin is going to have a little bit of a relief rally. I'm going to go back to the other chart in a bit, but basically this is our resistance right now between 40 and 43k, and above that I'm going to draw these levels on the other chart. This is where market structure was broken, so basically support, tapped into it again, then sold off. So that's a key level. And then the other key level is where the move down originated. So basically there is market structure here too in this region, and then this little pop up here at around 55, 56 k. So let's go back to the other chart and see whether we have those levels in there too. What happened here? Did I lose? No, just a load issue. So essentially the red line up here, that's where market structure got broken, the move originated from. So that's where supply will be difficult to beat. That's around 53. And then if we go past 43, then I think we're going to trade at least into the 47, 48 region, if that makes sense, right? What are the caveats? What are the things that we need to pay attention for? Obviously, at this point, there is a little bit of resistance still here. So if this doesn't manage to trade into 42 and 42 doesn't reject us back below, that's kind of where it becomes tricky. And then the other thing that I'd be careful with is there's a bunch of stops up here, right? So there's a bunch of people who've been shorting. Funding is negative or neutral. So that means the sentiment is not exaggerated to longs. And I'd be very sensitive or careful once we get up here, and then kind of lose the level again, right? So if this becomes a deviation of the range, then careful when we dip back inside and reduce risk on a retest. If it then managed to get back above, that's fine. But that's where I probably cut some exposure. So to the downside, if this doesn't happen, if we get kind of rejected up here, then I'd say that a retest of this region is very likely. That's kind of a range low. There's a low here, there's a low here, and this obviously was the deviation slash the how do you call that? Like the trap into the rally. So essentially the level up here has to give some support, and there's a bit of a stop down here. So I'd say that this region should be support if price does come back down, but it doesn't look like it at this very moment. I'm kind of a little bit disappointed by the volume so far, but it is consolidating volume, so it's not abnormal to see low volumes after such a move, and as long as we're in the range. I'd be patient, don't risk too much, because obviously if things start to peak again, they've been very volatile. So, and if we're going to go up, it's probably going to be volatile too. So you can probably not use too much risk, as price action will expand itself neatly in large ways. Like people don't realize, but these moves are 10%. and from the bottom up to here was 40%. So that's huge for intraday movements. ETH, well, kind of did what we expected. We talked about this gray level over time being, let's go back to the weekly. We talked about how it was never either when it got immediately breached, then it always got retested and was a good level to work off. And if it got tested and didn't nuke it, then it was a good level to play to the other side. In this scenario, it nuked through it to the upside. So once it would be retested, it would be a good level to go along. That's what we've seen. That's kind of what happened. And we talked about trading into orange and possibly the black line up here at 0.074. So kind of done that. Good point to take off some risk. If we zoom further in on this chart, we can probably identify the regions that where a retest is interesting. So essentially, I'm not saying that this is the exact top. Maybe we go a little bit higher. But if we grab this, let's say this is the top, then a 0.618 is down here around this region. So essentially, I'd say that this region is a good spot if it does retrace to get longs in again, if that makes sense. Where does this become interesting to become uber bullish again? Well, obviously once we start trading back above the highs. But ideally what we see is a little bit of a retracement and a reaccumulation, then pop up here. That would be then this here. If we do consolidate below the level for a while, then I think the breakout here is once we test this level, come back, retest this range level here, then I think that's a good spot to get long to new highs. I hope that made sense, and I'm going to catch you on Sunday. Hopefully you've been fine. The market has been really tough on some people, and if you got hit too bad and are in the mood for revenge trading, just be careful, don't move too fast, take some time off, rewire how you feel, how you think about the market, and make sure that if you want to keep continuing and you lost a lot of money, that you don't throw your risk management overboard. All right, that was it. I'll catch you on Sunday.